Hello, hi, and welcome to this morning's show. Today we are bringing live streamed to you in the Coronavirus Business Support Group and also in our Ambition Growth Network members group. We have Val Mckie. She's a very dear friend of mine, and she's been really nice to have her join us today. She's just literally setting up a new business, so another kind of business that's opened up during the lockdown, which is called Parties for Peace, which she's going to tell us about, and also how we can work on our leadership skills and survive, obviously, and thrive past lockdown. So please help me welcome Val to the screen. I'm just going to bring you in now, Val. Here we go. Fantastic. Good morning.
Good morning, and hi everyone.
Great to have you.
Hello.
Yeah, fantastic. It's quite interesting, isn't it? I do like the fact that obviously we can zoom in from anywhere. Obviously, Formby, how's Formby this morning? Have you got sunshine or rain?
We've got rain, lots of it. And I was going to be in Lewis today, going to a jazz festival. So there we go.
See, I've got my guy behind me. I chose a good wallpaper when I redecorated my dining room. So it's always sunny and blue skies in my dining room. So happy days, eh? Happy days. Oh, it's lovely to see you. Fantastic. So tell us a bit about obviously what you've been up to in lockdown and why you kind of created your new business.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, my passion has always been peace. And through lockdown, I have a nephew who is special needs, who had a kidney transplant many years ago. And he lives from one celebration to another. And of course, this year we couldn't have the celebrations like we've had in the past, but we did actually organise something that coincided with when people were clapping for the NHS. So my sister brought him in the car and he drove through our street and everyone cheered and clapped. And that made his day. And that then made me realise that all the time that we're talking about peace, we talk about it as an absence of war and an absence of conflict, which is fine. However, we need to be, but then we actually deal with this thought, rest in peace usually means we're, so as something for people to aim for, it's not really, it doesn't really have that much traction. But what happened is so many of the neighbours came to me and said how much it cheered them up, cheering Marky up. And I went, actually, that's what we need to do. One of the things we need to bring out of lockdown, to lock in the kindness that there's been through lockdown and some of the benefits that people have had, we need to celebrate that which is really great in us. Because when we're celebrating, right, it's really hard to fight someone. And as we found in the First World War, when soldiers played football on Christmas Day, they only ever did it once because they weren't so keen to, well, they didn't want to go back out and fight that lad that they played football with. So I started Parties for Peace, and I'll share more about that with you all another day. But basically, it's to encourage everyone to have a party, celebrate what's good in their lives, leading up to World Peace Day on the 21st of September. So, but there'll be more in the group much later about all of that.
Yeah, fantastic. That's lovely. I think, yeah, it's been a really interesting time in lockdown, isn't it? Just seeing communities come together. And actually, I mean, I've recently moved house and just didn't really even know who my neighbours were. And actually, when you don't see your friends and family like you do normally, actually, it's nice to be able to connect, as I said, with your neighbours and your community, but also online. And I think actually a lot of us have kind of embraced kind of our online connections a lot more, social media, and being able to kind of have this connection, which gets our words out to the masses, isn't it? So no, that's fantastic. So today you're going to be doing a little presentation for us, which is really kind. So as I said, in a second we'll be putting up on the screen. If anyone would like to ask any questions, I said obviously we can do that beforehand. So there's a couple of people that have said hello, so good morning. If you do want to put any questions out there, do make sure that you connect with StreamYard and click to approve your name and your Facebook profile. Otherwise, we don't know who you are. So please do that. But thank you so much to everyone that is watching live. And I said, obviously, we'll answer some questions a bit pieces after the presentation. But feel free to pop them in and I'll pop them up on the screen for Val at the end. So I'm going to pass it over to you now, Val. Be awesome. Right, are you ready? I'm going to pop up this.
Okay, I'm ready.
So here we go. Lovely. All right. So leading through the storm. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. So, you may all have noticed that the world is not quite the same today as it was this time last year. And one of the key things about being a leader is people are looking to us to be able to support them with working through their issues. But we have our issues too. And one of the things that this presentation is about is actually helping us understand why we're responding in the way that we're doing and what we can do to make it easier to stay calm and focused as the world around us is crumbling. So thank you very much all for being here today. As Joe said, share any questions, and at the end of the presentation, I'll answer them as best I can. Okay, so first of all, right, okay. Here's a modern definition of resilience. So I'm sure that there's been so much talk about resilience at the moment and how to be resilient, and resilience is the way through, and that's that. But what are we actually talking about? Okay, and what is the way to deal with it? So I quite like this. So it's not ADHD, it's ADA. So, having something that we're moving towards, being proactive, right, and dealing with adversity, which you may well have had some adversity in the last few months, and it's different for everyone. So, as people were talking about, we're all in the same boat. I'm sure you'll have heard this. We're not all in the same boat. We're all in different boats, but in the same storm. And this is where it's actually really important that those of us who can reach out to those of us who can't, which is why I think what Joe and Carly did with Coronavirus Support Group is just one example of that. So thank you, Joe and Carly. Right, okay. So, currently, we're dealing with grief because the world as we know it has changed. And our first response, so this is a very famous chart, the Kubler-Ross grief chart. And so what has happened, and I just want you to have a look at that and try and figure out where you might be in this process. So in the beginning, there's a shock, and the shock is such that we actually just don't even acknowledge that it's happened, right? So we're in a period of denial, and it's, if any of you, sadly had a bereavement, those first few minutes, you actually just can't believe it happened. So that's the first stage, and it's interesting because there's no time set on these phases, and we can dip in and out of them. So some people get over a certain aspect of the phase really quickly, and others take longer, but then it's different. So we go into denial, and then we come down into these emotions of anger, blame, and bargaining. Now, one of the things that if we're looking at the protests that we've seen in the last few weeks, that is sitting within that anger, blame, bargaining phase within the process. Beyond that, if there isn't any reconciliation of that, then we go into depression, confusion, and that's where we just basically don't want to get out of bed. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had days through these last 3 months where I have just not wanted to get out of bed. Or actually, because the weather's been so good, I haven't actually wanted to get out of the deck chair. And the important thing about being in any of these phases is to just acknowledge that it's perfectly normal and natural, and that if you let it happen, then you'll get through it. If we try and hold on to it and start to beat ourselves up because, well, I should be doing this and I should be doing that, and that, don't. Just actually go, do you know what? I'm in this phase. Because when we get through that, we can get to acceptance. Well, this is how it is now. And then moving up to solutions. What are we going to do? And then finally, consolidation. What are we going to do and who are we going to do it with? And that's definitely a process I've been through with Parties for Peace. And we're very much now. The Parties for Peace is a solution, and now it's how do I share that solution? How do we consolidate it? And how do we take a concept and make it a reality? All right, okay. So in the first instance, with everything that's going on, our brain goes into amygdala hijack. We really feel like we've got a gun to our heads, and it has, and this happens, and it's no matter what. So anything which comes to us, which is a shock, right, sets our brain into amygdala hijack because it's part of our survival mechanism. Okay, so one of the things about it is that in amygdala hijack, right, we are much lower down in this graph of emotional states. So in amygdala hijack, we're definitely within fear, grief, apathy, or guilt. But fear, amygdala hijack is about fear, and that can lead to grief, apathy, and guilt, and that's where we are suffering. Okay, so it's just really important to recognize that right is something we cannot control. That we cannot control that first response, because that is the response that is a prehistoric response in the limbic part of our brain, which is known as the sort of most primitive part of our brain. It's there, it happens, and that's not really the issue. Recognizing it's there, recognizing that we have these feelings, possibly not actually acting on them, but just recognizing that we're feeling it and taking a step back from it is the thing which is most important. Okay, so one of the things that we need to do when we've been hit with this is, when we take the step back, is to look at, why is this important to us? And one of the most important reasons is because we feel under threat, and we feel under threat because we cannot control, or we believe we cannot control what's happening. So one of the interesting things to do, one of the interesting places to take us, is to go into our circle of control and look at things that we can control rather than what we can't. So endless watching of the news, right, is taking us to a space where things are happening over which we've got no say. And that becomes a really difficult thing to start to deal with. So what we want to do when we've had that sort of first hit of that is to take that step back and step back into ourselves and recognize that there is a whole range of things we actually can control, as you can see here on the slide. So that's why it's been really important for some people through this crisis, to have a daily routine. It might be a completely daily routine different to what was there before, but it's actually really good because these things all act as anchors. So if you see the circle of control in the middle almost as the anchor, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. So things we can control: our daily routine, our diet, if we're doing some exercise, how much time are we actually spending watching TV and stressing ourselves out with the massive amount of fear that's there, what we do on social media, how much time we spend on that. I found it very worrying listening to something the other day that talked about, that actually encouraged people to use their time sort of spent on the loo actually on social media. For me, because what is happening is actually changed the pattern of our brain. Again, what time we go to sleep, our response to stress, more of which I'm going to talk about now. Interestingly enough, our voice, right? So when we have a shock and we go, there is a reason why we do it. That actually, it deals with the vagus nerve, which controls virtually everything in our body. And what we do when we go is actually we are calming that nerve down. So interesting. That's why singing can be really, really therapeutic. We can control our thoughts, but there's times where you think you never can, right? And people say this to me all the time, oh, blah, 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 but I can't help what I'm thinking. And I always kind of go, well, if you can't, who can? This is a very interesting thing, because our thoughts are our own creation. And just because we think something doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. But a bit more about that. And then another thing we can control is our breathing, because when we're stressed, right, physiologically, our breathing becomes shallow because we are, gearing up to fight the time. So one really good way of dealing with stress is to do something, right, and is to try this, and it is to breathe in on the count of 4 and breathe out on the count of 8, right? And do this 3 or 4 times. I'm going to say this is an exercise we can do at the end of this.
Do it now. We could do it. We could.
Well, we can do it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm very happy to do it now. So if you want to sit up wherever you are, right, put your hands on your hands on the top of your legs, on your knees, right, sit up straight. And I'll do the counting if you like. So it's breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Last one. Breathe in, breathe out. Okay.
Be calm now. That's lovely, isn't it? Amazing.
That's a really useful thing, and it's a really great way to, you know, people talk, you know, there's all sorts of things we can do, things like meditation. We all know we should exercise. We all know we should do lots of things, but actually just controlling our breathing, nobody even needs to know that's what you're doing, but it's to just recognize when you feel those first signs, it's a really good way to move forward. Okay. All right. Okay. So you see the big hairy monster there, right? This hairy monster is everything that we fear. So when the coronavirus thing first happened, right, it naturally triggered all our fears. It triggered our fears of survival, both physically and emotionally. You know, we, despite what we might think, we do still live in a society where we will not starve to death. However, right, the way that we were responding to that was as if there would never be food available again. And that is perfectly natural. And there are reasons why some people stockpiled at the level they did and other people didn't. And I think what's really important is rather than judging a person's behaviour, it's to actually try and stand alongside them and think, well, what's actually going on for them? So when we see behaviours that we maybe don't approve of or that, rather than criticising, condemning someone, it's to actually start and go, well, what would someone actually have to believe to make them behave in that way? And so, very interesting, as I say, if you worked in the public sector, if you work in the public sector, then you know you weren't fearing losing your job, you weren't fearing losing your business, right? Because your salaries were going to be paid. As an entrepreneur, you know, everything that I was doing stopped literally on the day of lockdown. I generally travel probably about 30,000 miles a year. I have bought I've fueled my car at once in the last 3 months, which has been quite handy actually, and I've not missed the driving. But as I say, so people's fears, we fear the thing that we think we can't control and the thing that we can't handle. And people's fears are different, and it's just really important to recognise that. Okay. Right. So what happens to us is when our brain is under stress, it gets filled with cortisol and adrenaline. It gives us tunnel vision, so it narrows down our focus, and we become very focused on ourselves, right? And it leads to repetitive negative thoughts. So just imagine this. You haven't eaten all day because you've been busy. I do this all the time. And you get invited to an event like this, but it's for real. And there is this great buffet in front of you, right? If you had breakfast and you're not hungry, you'll stand back really happily and you'll just wait because if you've already figured out there's not enough buffet for people, you're not bothered, you'll wait. But if you haven't eaten, right, all day, then all of a sudden there's that scarcity of food and you might be more likely to sort of reach over and rush to the front and grab that food. Okay, that's because we're coming from a different space and because we have tunnel vision. And this has been what's really been interesting in this crisis, is being that for some people, the brains are massively understood. People were already stressed. What this process has actually done is amplify what people were already going through. So it's made things that were tolerable and we were managing intolerable. And so, you know, that's the thing. So we've got a lot of people at the moment with very stressed brains. Okay, the opposite. So, and what that's doing is when our brain's under stress, we are triggering our defense mechanisms. And there are 4 of them. Often we just hear about fight and flight, but actually there's 4. So it's fly, so we'll run away from something, we'll fight it, we will stand completely frozen, not knowing what to do. And our brains are completely frozen, we cannot think, which is one of the things that happens when our brains are stressed. Or we'll fawn, and by fawning we mean people pleasing. So we become very indecisive. We don't even think, we can't even think about what's right for us. We just want to make sure that everybody is okay and happy. Now, one of the interesting things is if you find yourself in any of these at any time over a longer period of time, even though you don't think that you are afraid or feeling threatened, your subconscious does. That's why you're reacting in the way that it is. So, you know, the obvious ones like the aggression, we all sort of know about and we see it, right? But people pleasing, do we really ever see as a defense mechanism? And I don't think that people do. That's the one that I do most. Yeah, Joe, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was going to say actually, yeah, I've not. Quite often we talk in a lot of our other groups about fight and freeze, but fawn's kind of a different one that kind of hasn't really been spoken about. But yeah, I can completely understand where you're coming from that one. And again, it's kind of those little signs, isn't it, that you can look into and kind of really understand your body and understand your unconscious kind of reactions to those triggers to stress. Have a little bit more kind of quieter, perhaps, than the fight one.
Well, I think that's it. And Oprah actually talks about the disease of people pleasing because she was a people pleaser. So we generally, it's in the past it's been associated with it's women who people please, but actually there is as many men who people please, but maybe in different ways. But it's also women we've maybe been conditioned to people please more than to fight. So we're still living with that type of conditioning that we had as a child. So, if that old adage of a boy is told to stand up for himself and go thump somebody if he's not happy, where a girl was told to be really nice and not do it. And those messages are still out there, but they are changing. So as I say, the important thing is to recognize that if you're in any of those states, A, they're natural states to be in, but B, you might not realize just how under threat you're feeling. And it's actually, so too often, you can be sent on anger management courses or that. But the most important thing is to find out what it is we're afraid of, because fear is at the root of any of these defense mechanisms. So there we are. Take a deep breath as we think about that. Right, and moving on. So just in case it gets too much, here's just a few things that we can do if we're suddenly feeling really, really panicking. So we've talked about breathing, but interestingly, splashing some water on our face, just because it shifts our state. Right, okay. So it's really, really, so just a short, sharp shock. Some people wear an elastic band or something around their wrist. And if you just ping that, it's something that it just alters your brain state. Longer term, it's really useful to actually write down your thoughts, because when we're under stress and we have tunnel vision and we're in repetitive negative thoughts, sometimes we don't realize just how crazy they are. So, and trust me, many years back, I think it was either Horlicks or Ovaltine, found that they quadrupled their sales with an advertising campaign that went drink either Horlicks or Ovaltine at night to stave off night starvation. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know anyone in the Western world who was going to starve overnight, particularly not if they'd not had a milky bedtime drink. But that hit right into the psyche, right? So and it hit 2 fears: our fear of starvation and our fear of the dark, and it quadrupled the sales. So one of the interesting things to do is actually write down our thoughts on what we think the consequences of something are, because actually I'll talk a bit more about it in a minute. If we have a sense of humor about it, it takes us out of it. Practice meditation. Yeah, if you can. Meditation isn't for everyone. The more stressed we are, the more we should meditate, the harder it actually is. But there's lots, and there's been lots put out now for free, lots of free meditation things. I'm just about to start on another Deepak Chopra 21-day one, about improving our lives. I'm happy to share that link with anybody. It's free if you fancy it. So it's that. And so that's just but in the short term, if you're feeling really, really panicky, actually throw cold water on your face is the way to deal with it. So moving on. Okay, remember this. Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. But it's that illusion of doing something. But of course, what happens is the more we worry, the more we stress ourselves out. So I'll come to something in a minute that might help you deal with that. I really like that analogy. I've got a relative who just is addicted to worry. And she just worries about, and if she doesn't have something to worry about, she worries about that because something clearly is going to happen in the future. Right, okay. So let's look at the happy brain. Okay, so the happy brain is filled with dopamine and oxytocin. So in the unhappy brain, in the stress brain, we have adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is great for a short-term thing, right? And we've all done that. You know that I love a tight deadline. It boosts my adrenaline. I'll get it going. It's fine in the short term. The problem with it is that when we've had some fearful thing happen, we don't get rid of the adrenaline. Animals don't have memories like we do. So an animal that's being, is in danger, when the danger has passed, the animal literally shakes itself out. And interestingly enough, actually shaking ourselves, right, and moving around can actually get rid of some adrenaline. So adrenaline is fine, but we don't want too much of it. And we don't want addiction to it, which is why, and this can happen so often, particularly when we're entrepreneurs and we're working on our own, and we love firefighting. I work with lots of people who actually create fires in their business that they can fight. And because there is this addiction to adrenaline. And arguably, we've got a lot of society addicted to adrenaline. So in the happy brain, it's got it's got dopamine and oxytocin, and these are the chemicals that are released when we are in love, right? Very much so. So this is not just about being in love with another person. It can be about being in love with life. It can be about in love with our business. It's that feeling. And in that feeling, you think you can do anything. The world is a beautiful place and it's there. So what we want to do is look at how we can bring more of that into our lives, because the issue that's really important is it's only in that state, strangely enough, right? Because people are kind of going, oh, under a crisis, I perform better and all the rest of it. It's the adrenaline. But actually, it's the love of that feeling which is bringing about innovation. It's not the crisis itself. It's actually the enjoyment of the crisis that's doing it. And so that's really important, because the stress brain cannot think creatively. It is only a happy brain that can do that. And the happy brain is innovative. It's self-focused, solution-focused. Look, there's things we can do. There's way out of this. It's collaborative. So it's like working with other people. And how do we all come together to do this? When I first came up with the idea of Parties for Peace, I was almost overwhelmed by the fact that all sorts of amazing things just happened around me. Without me having to do anything, which was really quite hard, because it was a bit like I'd just pick the phone up and someone say, oh yeah, Val, I'd love to do that for you. So there you go. So this is the state that we want to get to be in. This is the state where great things happen. Okay. Right.
Trying to create.
Go on, Joe.
I was just going to say, obviously, yeah, that you brought up on the happy brain is kind of what we try and create with our Ambition Growth Network. And as I said, the innovation, the collaborations, and kind of working together and being surrounded by that positivity actually can really lift your mood when you're kind of not feeling, like you were saying right at the beginning, you were having days where you kind of couldn't get out of bed or just wanted to be lazy and just hang around. But I think actually when you put yourself in and surround yourself, I think for me, being kind of isolated has been quite tricky. And I think actually having kind of the connections online has really boosted my mood and helped from that point of view as well, isn't it? Just to kind of, take us all, rising tide lifts all boats, as they say, isn't it? So.
Absolutely, and I think it's that knowing that it's the enjoyment of finding solutions in a crisis, which is delivering the oxytocin and dopamine hit. Because, you know, at the end of the day, the reason why we put prisoners in solitary confinement is a punishment. We are social animals. Thank goodness that we have got, you know, this way to connect with each other. Because otherwise, you know, if we, for those people who've literally been in solitary confinement for 3 months, there's going to be some interesting analysis about the impact on their health, because it's not just on people's mental health, it's actually on their physical health, because high stress and that sense of isolation is going to lead to despair. You know, we've never been in a pandemic like this before, despite the fact actually that scientists and medical people have been saying for at least 10 years that, you know, we were due to one soon. So, you know, we've done what we've done as very much as a reaction to you know, to a fear that we couldn't quantify, you know. So that, but I think on reflection, the important thing is what do we learn through this crisis, and how do we build that better as a result of it? So some resilience factors, if we're looking at this, taking care of ourselves, you know, maintaining, being positive, but we need other people. We need other people. And I think lots and lots of research has shown that those people who are truly successful in life, in whatever way, shape or form it is, always has the seed of something which is sown very early in life, where someone has believed in them, and a partner with them, right? And it can be, and that can be a business partner, it can be you know, a family partner, but it's got to be someone who believes in them and will stick with them no matter what. And so we can all be moderately successful, we can all get so far, but the key to it is moving from that I to we, which is why I think, Joe, you know, you and Carly coming together and doing this is part of the reason why it's been so successful. And you're absolutely right, being able to bounce ideas off people. So it's having meaning and purpose and support, right? These are all factors that lead us to be resilient. You know, we are technically all resilient because we basically all survived birth. And if you think about it, 1 minute we were in that womb and it was warm and it was wet and we were fed and it was cozy. And the next minute we were out in this world. Now, you know, that's a fairly significant shift. And strangely enough, we've all survived it. So we have that inbuilt resilience, but these factors, that's about survival, but these factors need to be in place to keep us resilient. So it's not, you know, the one person on their own thing. It's about coming together and getting that support and being able to ask for that support, which is not always easy, particularly if you're like a solo entrepreneur. Asking for help and support's not easy. One of the good things I think that's come out of lockdown is the way people have connected with each other. So I belong to a couple of groups up here in the Northwest, and I've been amazed at some of the conversations, the very open conversations people have had. And then in sharing that, you know, we've been able to come together to provide solutions. So that's great. Okay, so what is it? So an interesting thing is to just have a look at this graph and ask yourself some questions. So, do I have a problem in life? Do we have a problem in life? If the answer is no, fine, that's it. Then don't worry. Right. If the answer is yes, then the next question is, can you do something about it? If the answer is no, well, do you know what? Don't worry. Because if it's no, it's not a problem, it's a fact, right? If the answer is yes, don't worry, because just do the thing you've got to do about it. So ultimately, if we go back to the rocking chair, that's how you get out of the rocking chair. So just an interesting thing, because it is quite important. Certain things are facts of life. They're not going to change. I'm going to get older. My hair is going to get grayer, and I'm going to get more wrinkles, right? There is things I can do to mediate a bit against that, but not an awful lot. But the smile on my face and the shine in my eyes is not going to change. So have a think about those things which we consider a problem, because sometimes what we consider a problem is not actually a problem at all. It's the symptom of another issue. That's why we can't find a solution. And that phrase, solutions are easy once we know what the problem is, holds very true. And I work quite a lot with engineers. They always put that into place in their engineering. But when it comes to engineering our lives, we don't always do it. Okay, thank you. So this is quite interesting because we all hear all the time about working hard, you know, and you know the phrase, work smarter, not harder, and all the rest of it. But we have a society that values hard work, right? So one of the reasons why things can be hard for us is because we don't really actually want to do them, right? I love this. Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And I think that's the key, right? Because, you know, it's the poker thing. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them. If something is really, really, really hard, then it may just not be the right thing to be doing. And one of the things about lockdown has been that we have had generally more time to think. If we've got our brain into a more happier state, we can't think creatively, as I said before, if we're in a very stressed state. But if we're in that happier state, then there is time to reflect and actually look at life and kind of go, well, you know, a lot of businesses are talking about almost like starting again. And if I'm starting again from scratch, would I do it the way that I did it before? Or what is there in my business that I don't really like? So let's say you don't like paperwork, right? I hate paperwork, right? This could be to getting a VA to do it, because we need to sort of break some of that cycle of thinking around what's hard, right? And actually go, there's things that are challenging, they're not hard, they're challenging, right? We also got to deal with the thought that you know leads to imposter syndrome, which is, if I can do this, it must be easy, right? Remember, what I find easy, another person would find exceptionally hard. And to give you an example, years back I was doing a 3-day assessment process with a company of recruitment, and I took my colleague Kathy with me, who was my admin person, right? And Kathy, I told her what the client wanted, and I knew what I was going to talk about and what I was going to do in the exercises and blah blah blah, right? And she just created all these amazing files, and everything was brilliant. I was like, yay, great! And at the end of it, we sat down, we went out for dinner, and I went, oh, thank you, Kathy, you did all that hard stuff. And she said, no. She said, I did the easy stuff. She said, you did the hard stuff. The point about it is we were both in our zone doing our thing. So to us, it was easy, it was fun, it was challenging, but it was easy. And I think one of the hardest things.
Yeah, it's quite important, isn't it? I think to try and find our flow and our energy, kind of when we're doing something that we really love and that kind of is really passionate about, then actually feel like it's hard work. But actually, like you were talking about the imposter syndrome, and I was having a discussion with someone the other day about that, really, and kind of, I don't know, it's a bit of a strange thing. And I think obviously the more that we try and say, oh, we've got this syndrome, the more we kind of have an excuse for not doing it. And I think realistically, people find different things enjoyable. They kind of experience. And again, kind of when you start in business compared to someone that's been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years, you're at a very different part of your journey, and understanding that we're all beginners. They were beginners once upon a time, weren't they? And I think obviously all the mistakes that we make are stepping stones to climbing that ladder. Failure is kind of a word that we were talked about a lot when I was younger, and I think the school system really kind of ingrains into you that it's a bad thing to fail, but actually it's the only way that we can learn and grow and kind of really kind of get that exponential growth that we're all after, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's a few things, you know, that phrase, failure is just the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. And also, you know, it is like they say, if when a child is learning to walk, every time they fell over, so technically failed, if we slap them across the legs, the one thing we guarantee is they would never learn to walk. And you know, it's very interesting that some of the early conditioning, which we've completely forgotten about, does lead us to actually be thinking. We subconsciously, we've got stuff going on in our subconscious that we have no idea about, and we live a story based upon that. And you know, we might want to explore this in another session. It's there because I also think I'm not, you know, it is about people who, okay, people don't even know they have imposter syndrome, right? We all have doubts about our ability, but some people have no idea just how deep that's going. And I think it's really important to sort of stand alongside someone and get to the bottom of it. The most important thing is, though, is actually helping them understand where it comes from, because, you know, we all know like really bright people who could do really well, and you know, if we tell them that, right, we think that we're giving them a boost and we're boosting their morale, but actually we're saying, look, we know you're brilliant and we know that you can do this, and they're sort of thinking they don't really know who I am. If they really knew who I was, you know, it wouldn't be there. And what you have is imposters generally are really high achievers because they're always trying, because they're always afraid they're going to be found out, right? The most famous imposter that we know is actually Einstein. Who just thought that people massively overrated his work. So there is, but you know, it might be something we want to explore at a, you know, in another session. Okay.
That's really important.
Yeah. So how do we bounce back? How do we move from that stress brain to the happy brain? You know, what are some of the things that we can do? Right. So some of the things we can do is remember times before when we have bounced back. Remember those moments where we thought it was all totally hopeless, where everything felt against us, right? Now, you could be 5 years old when you first had this feeling, right? So this is quite important. This is not just something that might have happened in the last 10 years, but through our life, we've all faced challenges, right? And, you know, they may not look like a big challenge to another person, but if they felt big to you, then they are big. So a good thing is to have a think back and say, well, you know, what other things have I overcome? And actually jot that down, because it's really good to remember, because we're hardwired to think 9 times more negatively than positively. Okay, so whilst we might remember a bad time, the thing we might forget is how we got over it. So really important is to connect with that. Back to what we've been talking about before, have a clear passion and purpose. And if you don't know what your passion and purpose is, right, then make it your passion and purpose to find out. Right, there's lots of tools out there that can help you with that. I work with a couple of values tools which are really useful in doing it, but it is around just kind of just say, right, I just want to know, what is it that makes my heart sing? Right, you know, you need to talk this through with someone, because, you know, talking to ourselves will always give us the same answer. But if you've got somebody, a good friend, a confidant, a coach, a cheerleader like me, then use that. But just make that your mission. Make that to find out what my passion and purpose is. And it's interesting because once you stack the brain to look for it, you'll find it. Another thing is to kind of go, and this can be, you know, what is the worst that can happen, right? And actually really go there, because sometimes in the going there, right, you can actually see the funny side of it, right? Ultimately, it's like, oh my goodness, you know, have you ever, if you've ever lost your wallet or your purse, and your mind totally races as to, you know, basically whoever's stolen that is going to use all your cards, but they're not just going to use all your cards. They are going to access your mortgage company. They're going to steal money that you don't even have, you know, and you'll end up destitute on the street. And that's catastrophizing, right? It's a very natural thing to do. It's also, it can be quite good to do if you actually consciously become aware of it. Again, write it down. And then ask yourself, you know, how have other people survived this, even if it was a catastrophe, right? And then, but have a sense of humor. The thing that separates us from the animal kingdom is our sense of humor. That's why through lockdown, I think I've seen some of the funniest things ever shared on social media. And that is because that's part of our way out. So having a sense of humour about it. Okay, right. So a quote from Gandhi, and I've taken the quote as it was. You know, a man is but the product of his thoughts, and what he thinks he becomes. And I use that because I particularly like this photograph. But you know, it is a person, right? We are the product of our thoughts, and what we think we become. So we can think ourselves into being a hero. Now, what that guy is doing on there is something I can tell you I would never attempt ever in a million years. Okay, it just doesn't appeal to me. Anything physical that might kill me is not a place that I would want to go to in life, ever. But I will stand up on a stage in front of 3,000 people, and I know an awful lot of people kind of go, oh my God, that's more scary than that. So remember, we all have different things that scare us, right? Okay, remember, okay, whatever we may think about how successful we are, I totally love this one, is this. Good morning, I see the assassins have failed. We are successful. We have actually fulfilled our number one goal in life, which is to survive. So we're all here today. Hopefully we'll all be here tomorrow. So every day actually starts with something to be grateful for, because I have survived the night. I have survived the night terrors, the dark, right? I didn't have my Horlicks or Ovaltine, and I didn't starve. So remember, we've survived the first step. We have survived. Number one goal, right? Okay, right. Remember, courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear. It's not about not feeling it. So it's natural to feel fear. It's much better now that we've been through this presentation, which Joe, I think is going to be online for people, is to remember, if we make the focus to make our brain happy, then, you know, then we can actually rise above and start to do all of the things. But if we beat ourselves up because we're down in the dumps and we're afraid and everything, we just make it worse. So know there is a pathway out. It may not be clear, but know it, and know that feeling fear is natural, because it is there, right, to provide us with, you know, achieving the number one goal, survival. Right, but what we want to do is ride the paralysis that fear can bring. All right. Okay. If we're feeling afraid, and if we're, you know, thinking of the metaphorical tiger, right, yawning is an amazing thing to do to help release the fear. So you know the breathing. So breathe in for 4, breathe out for 8. Another thing that we can do is just yawn. Now, I don't know how many of you are now yawning just at the mention of the word yawning. Right. Right. In fact, we could all be asleep. I'll be finished in a minute. But the important thing is what yawning is doing, right, is releasing the nerves at the back of our throat. That's why singing, as I mentioned earlier, is really good for dealing with stress. Yawning is amazingly good at dealing with stress. And if you're going into a meeting or something that's really, really stressful, and you feel that you've got no control or anything, just try yawning. Because trust me, everybody else in the room will be yawning within a second. So you could, at that point, realise just how much you've controlled what's going on. Probably, I think I'd be more inclined to think about it rather than do it. But the problem being is once you think about it, you'll yawn. As we're probably all yawning now, we'll all be asleep in a minute.
You'll be a bit careful with the timing of you as well, isn't it?
Okay, really important. View our lives with kind sight. Stop beating ourselves up about things from our past, and instead of slapping the forehead and asking what was I thinking, breathe, ask yourself a quieter question and go, what was I learning? Right, okay. Remember, a diamond is just a chunk of coal that's made under great pressure. Okay, it's unearthing the diamond within us. Right, okay, and ask ourselves, are we going to be prisoners of the past, cowering in fear, or pioneers of the future, going where no one has ever been and leaving a trail for others to follow? So if you make yourself in the story of your life, make yourself the hero and become a pioneer. That's why we're entrepreneurs, because we've got that pioneering spirit within us. Okay, remember, we don't have to see the whole staircase, we just have to take that first step. So take that first step on that hero's journey. You know, share with people, say with the group, this is what this group's all about. Together, you know, it's amazing. You know, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. Right. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Joe and Carly, for having me here today, and thank you everyone for listening.
It's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Val, for sharing that little presentation with us. It was lovely, actually. I've got to say, I've missed your presentations. Obviously, I've listened to many over the years, and you've shared that with the group today, and reminded us of all those kind of little things just to remember, really, isn't it? Because I think, yeah, when we're kind of out of our normal routine and out of all of the kind of face-to-face networking events that we've been doing, and even just connecting as well, I think sometimes it's really tricky, isn't it, to connect with everybody in a way. So I said, obviously, no, that's been really useful. As I said, we've gone live into obviously the Coronavirus Business Support Group, but also our Ambition Growth Network group today as well. So the video will be saved there, but we're also going to be adding them onto our YouTube channel, which we've literally just launched. I've just decided to embrace a bit of technology and get it all on there. So yeah, so if you do want to like, comment and subscribe, and obviously watch the whole thing later on, it will be on our YouTube channel, which is Ambition Growth Network. So I'll pop a little link on there. So yeah, really appreciate that, Val. And obviously you've just joined our Ambition Growth Network, so we're hoping that you can obviously, yeah, take as much from that as possible. Obviously get the support that you need as well, because I think, yeah, like you mentioned earlier, we are givers, aren't we? And we do try and please other people, support other people, but we also need to accept it back as well. So really looking forward to sharing that with you. So let me just remove that one so we can go back big on the screen. There we go. See each other now. How exciting. So, yeah, it's been really good. So obviously, yeah, I think it's tricky with the longer lives, isn't it, from that point of view? We've got a few people kind of watching at the moment. So if anyone does have any questions I would like to put to Val, or anything they'd like to share, maybe the presentation obviously brought up some kind of, yeah, feelings and questions about obviously what we do. Obviously pop them in the little comment section and we can bring them up on the screen. Sven, right at the beginning, so literally within the first few seconds, obviously I'll pop this one up, just saying, I like that, we're not in the same boat, we're in the same storm. And I think, actually, yeah, I did read a quote about that literally a couple of weeks into lockdown, because actually we're all experiencing a very different situation in lockdown. People are really, really thriving, some people are really struggling. And again, I think it's our ability to try and obviously, yeah, help each other out and kind of, yeah, look for the good in the community that we've got, really, isn't it? So yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Sven. Awesome stuff. Lovely. Let me just hide that one away. We've got a few people watching at the moment. We've got Carrie, we've got Mike, Sven's still watching. That's lovely. Kelly, Amber, Carly. So good. It's still morning. It is still morning. Good morning to everyone. So I hope you really enjoyed kind of the presentation that we've had this morning from Val. As I said, all of our members of Ambition Growth Network will be given the opportunity to showcase kind of what they do and give some extra value to the group. I think it's just really nice to delve a bit deeper, isn't it, and kind of understand and give people the opportunity to understand what we do, really. So I'm just going to put a little banner here. So we've just obviously set up our new membership group. I'll give it a little plug. Why not? Why not? So yeah, we are week 3, so our 3-week anniversary. So we've set up Ambition Growth Network, which was kind of born out of the need of the support group that we've set up from the Coronavirus Business Support Group for those businesses that really want to take things to the next level and thrive post-lockdown. But it involves quite a lot of the stuff that you've talked about today, really, I suppose. So the financial support, the kind of emotional support, as well as business support and learning, I think, from that point of view, and having that safe space to ask for questions, ask for help and support and accountability, and kind of developing those relationships as well with people outside of your normal network, because I think obviously it can be quite nice to grow from that point of view and network with people all over the country. I've got to say, it's far easier than the 6-7 hour drive, isn't it, from Formby down to Plymouth? So yeah, it makes it really easy to connect. So, no, that's brilliant.
I was going to say, okay, well, if this has raised any issues that anybody wants to just talk privately with me, just drop me a message in the group, and I'm happy to have a chat. Okay.
That's really lovely. Fantastic. No, that's wonderful. Thank you, Val. Well, we'll finish off now because it's nearly coming up for the hour. So thank you ever so much for popping on and discussing with us all the information today. And good luck with your new venture as well, the Parties for Peace. So yeah, do pop a little bits and pieces out there in the group as well.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jo. Okay, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Oh, well, that was Val Mckie. Thank you so much for that. So, as I said, obviously, we will be downloading this onto our YouTube channel. So, do catch up with the whole interview if you have chance and subscribe to our channel. And we come live every Friday, 11 o'clock in the group. So, looking forward to next week. We have James Twigger next week. So, talking everything all about accountancy. So, look forward to seeing you then. Take care. Bye.